Hey everybody, thanks so much for checking out my video. I'm the History Freak, and today we're going to be talking about Henry VIII's first wife, Katherine of Aragon. Katherine was born on the 16th of December 1485. She was the youngest surviving child of the rulers of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella. Being from Spain, Katherine was Catholic. Her religion was very important to her for her whole life. In the same year that Katherine was born, the War of the Roses ended and her future father-in-law Henry Tudor became King Henry VII of England. At the age of 3, Katherine was betrothed to Henry VII's eldest son and heir, Prince Arthur. Katherine therefore grew up knowing that she would one day become Queen of England. At the age of 15, Katherine left Spain for England, bringing with her many attendants, including some African servants who are thought to have been the first Africans in London. Marriage between his son and a princess of Spain was appealing to Henry because his claim to the throne was weak. He hadn't inherited the throne, it was won by conquest. He spent much of his reign dealing with threats and enemies, and this marriage would strengthen his position in Europe. Therefore, Katherine and Arthur were married on the 14th of November, 1501. Fun fact, Katherine wore white, and it's thought that this is the first time white was worn at a royal wedding. Now married, Katherine and Arthur made their way to Ludlow Castle to establish their household. They both became unwell, and while Katherine recovered, tragically, Arthur died just 5 months into the marriage, leaving Katherine a young widow. Whether the marriage was consummated and therefore valid would come to be a matter of huge importance in the future. Katherine would always maintain the marriage wasn't consummated, but comments thought to be made by Arthur to one of his servants before his death possibly suggest otherwise. After Arthur's death, Katherine was left in England. Henry VII, who was extremely shrewd with money, was unwilling to return her dowry, and therefore she was left in financial limbo, struggling to pay for servants and gowns. Henry VII actually considered marrying Katherine himself after the death of Arthur and his own wife, Elizabeth of York. It was agreed that Katherine would marry Henry VII's second son and future King of England, Henry VIII. However, they needed a dispensation from the Pope to marry, as she had previously been married to his brother. On the 11th of June 1509, Henry VIII marries Katherine, who is 6 years older than him. She was a popular and influential queen. She also demonstrated she herself could be a strong leader, and ruled when Henry was out of the country. It's thought that Katherine addressed troops fighting in a war against Scotland in full battle armour while heavily pregnant. During the marriage, Katherine became pregnant 6 times, but only the 5th child lived, and that was the Princess Mary. This was a disaster, as it was seen as the most important job of a queen to provide heirs, and the view of the time was that a woman shouldn't rule, so without a son it put the whole Tudor dynasty in danger. Over years, with all the failed pregnancies, Henry became dissatisfied with the lack of male heir. He had affairs with many other women and fathered children, leading him to believe all the problems of their marriage laid with Katherine. Around 1526, Henry met and fell in love with Anne Boleyn, and he decided he wanted a divorce. To help justify his actions, he used Katherine's marriage to his brother as a way out. Katherine continued to say, and would say until her eventual death, that the marriage to Arthur was never consummated, and that she was in fact always Henry's true wife. Henry appealed to the Pope to help get an annulment. Annulments were hard to get for a royal marriage, but it was possible, as Henry's own sister Margaret had had her marriage annulled. Henry, after years of determination to get his own way, broke with Rome and the Catholic faith and set up the Church of England with himself as head. And this was a big problem for Katherine, as she could no longer appeal to Rome for help, because English kings were declared to have no superior on earth, including the Pope, and therefore Henry could now banish Katherine from court. On the 23rd of May 1533, the marriage was declared illegal and Princess Mary declared illegitimate. The same year, Anne Boleyn gave birth to the future Queen Elizabeth. During her banishment, Catherine was forbidden to see her daughter Mary. They were, however, offered the chance to meet again if they would both acknowledge Anne as the new queen. However, neither of them were prepared to do this. Should Catherine have just accepted the situation, acknowledged Anne, and at least been able to see her daughter? This is a really tricky one because religion was so important to Catherine, as well as all people at the time. I certainly admire how strong Catherine was, but I wouldn't think any less of her had she made the choice to accept the situation and at least have her daughter around for comfort. Mary had already been declared illegitimate, so it wasn't like Catherine was necessarily helping her cause. I just think it's really sad that the two women were never able to see each other again. Catherine in some ways had the last laugh as her daughter Mary would become Queen of England, and in doing so, restore the country to Catholicism. She was, however, one of England's most hated monarchs. Burning hundreds of heretics meant she would forever be known as Bloody Mary. So, what are your thoughts about Catherine? Personally, I think she showed remarkable courage and strength, despite facing great difficulty. She must have felt so lonely towards the end, but she showed dignity right up until her death. Do you agree with this? How do you think Catherine's life would have been had she not been removed? Do you think she should have given the king his wish and gone quietly? Should she have backed down in order to see her daughter? Comment down below your thoughts on Catherine, and if hopefully you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And join us on the next video when we'll talk about Henry VIII's second wife, Anne Boleyn. Ta-ta for now, history freaks.